them. You see? So that's the reason why they got to be real careful about how they correspond with these people in these phone conversations. Because the last thing they want to do is make it obvious to the world that we are organized here to destroy black children. Because that's all they've done. So it's obvious what you are objectified to do. Your objective will be obvious because it will be what you are doing. Okay? Alright? If you see me sit by the barbecue pit all day and spit, you will probably assume that's my job, like Richard Pryor said, because that's all he did. For your old school people that remember that. But anyway, back to the point. This stuff that's going on with these receptionists not having a problem working for Planned Parenthood and killing these little babies is the same type of stuff that the American people is going to be found guilty of, not having a problem sitting back watching the people of this earth do so bad and then watching a whole group of yourselves do so well and not realizing that it's us that's murdering these people. And we gotta be honest about that. Our actions and our treatment of these people is making them die. To prove that to you, you done murdered off everybody that was here in this land when you got here. And turned us all into slaves and got us all confused and messed up. And then on top of all that, look what you're doing with Planned Parenthood, still murdering us. And the more you murder us, the less your women are getting pregnant. So it's karma. That's all it is. You guys are really creating circumstances to make your disappearance on the earth get accelerated.
When this material was released to the public, Planned Parenthood's defense was to claim that the employees who made these statements were not reflecting the organization's corporate position. But in 1986, Planned Parenthood's national president, Faye Waddleton, made the following statement during an interview on CNN.
As a matter of fact, Mr. Dornan, if I may finish, we have received contributions from people who want to support us because they want all welfare mothers and all black women to stop having children.
What Ms. Waddleton was conceding in this CNN interview and what live action films found in their undercover investigation was acknowledged years before by a previous Planned Parenthood president. During a speech in Philadelphia in January 1966, Planned Parenthood President Alan Guttmacher stated that some of his colleagues appeared to have racial motives for their involvement with the organization. Not surprisingly, one of Guttmacher's acquaintances later warned him that in the future he should not be making comments like that in public. The person who gave that warning obviously understood that Planned Parenthood's racial agendas and attitudes are best kept out of the public. And that has been a philosophy that Planned Parenthood has embraced for many years.
To this day, Planned Parenthood has never disavowed either Margaret Sanger or her plans for targeted population control. In fact, the organization's highest award is still named after her, and has often been given to people associated with the American eugenics movement, including John D. Rockefeller in 1967. Then, in 2009, the award was given to Hillary Clinton, who said in her acceptance speech that she was in awe of Margaret Sanger and admired her vision. She also announced that the U.S. government was increasing its funding for United Nations family planning programs by 130%.
Frankly, I had thought that at the time Roe was decided, there was concern about population growth, and particularly growth in populations that we don't want to have too many of. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, United States Supreme Court Justice, July 2009.
Look at her dried up, desert looking ass. We ain't got to worry about your dry ass having no more
modern
babies.
America. That quote by Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the smoking gun. I mean, here is the most radical advocate of legalized abortion that's ever been on the Supreme Court, openly admitting in the New York Times that the real issue was never women's rights or privacy or reproductive freedom or being pro-choice. No, what she is saying is that the driving force behind making abortion legal was to exterminate certain groups of people. In other words, it was the Supreme Court's way of legitimizing a philosophy that's been pushed for the last 150 years by these ultra-wealthy elitists who believe they have the right to eliminate anyone that they have decided is inferior. And Planned Parenthood became the golden child of these people because they're the ones who figured out how to put this philosophy into practice. It was Planned Parenthood who figured out that the way to make eugenics work is not to kill people, but to convince the targeted group to commit cultural suicide. And the way you do that is with birth control and abortion. And Planned Parenthood has been successful at this because, unlike other eugenics organizations, they have always been able to keep their agenda hidden, not only from the public, but often from their own people. I mean, there are Planned Parenthood employees and volunteers all over this country who I'm convinced have no idea what they're actually mixed up in. But when Ruth Bader Ginsburg said what she said in July of 2009, she let the cat out of the bag. She made it clear that abortion was legalized in order to eliminate people that she and other elitists just like her don't want there to be too many of. And I think we all know who they're talking about. The fact is, when you actually sit down and research this issue, what you come to see is that if blacks had never been stolen out of Africa and brought here in chains, there would never have been a eugenics movement in the first place. There would never have been government sterilization boards. No one would have ever suggested putting birth control chemicals in the water supply. No one would have ever called for the legalization of abortion. And you would have never heard the terms population control and family planning. I mean, any way you cut it, if slavery had never existed, Planned Parenthood would not exist today.
In January of 2010, the state of Pennsylvania issued a report showing that even though less than 11% of its female population is black, they account for over 40% of the abortions performed in the state. Then, on February 14, 2010, Planned Parenthood opened a new abortion clinic in a section of Portland, Oregon that has a white population of under 2%. That facility is located on Martin Luther King Boulevard. Meanwhile, in Houston, Texas, Planned Parenthood is building the largest freestanding abortion clinic in the United States. Scheduled to open in April of 2010, this massive facility is being built in the middle of 4 neighborhoods whose residents are overwhelmingly black and Hispanic.
We need to remember that over 60 years ago, a man who could today be called the father of modern-day eugenics proposed that population control clinics be concentrated in minority neighborhoods. And now today, the vast majority of Planned Parenthood clinics are located in our neighborhoods. Are we really so naive to believe that this is all a coincidence? We all know that drugs, alcohol, and tobacco are devastating, especially in the black community. We know that the big corporations target us with the ads and the marketing campaigns. And yet, we don't notice that Planned Parenthood is doing the very same thing. We need to pay attention to the fact that in the 1960s, when we as African Americans began to demand our civil rights, for the first time in American history, there began a widespread cry in our government for legalized abortion. Was that coincidence too? Or could it be that when we said we would no longer sit on the back of the bus, a place was being reserved for us down at the abortion clinic?
For most people, it may be hard to conceive that the ethnic cleansing going on today with legal abortion began with the fear of freed slaves. But as you have seen, that is exactly what happened. When colonization failed,
I want to point something out. When you put the term ethnic cleansing, I don't even like that. You know why? Because there is nothing cleansing about the mass murder of people. You're not cleansing anything. You are making everything filth. That is ethnic contamination, okay? This ethnic cleansing thing is a word that should not ever be used unless you are seriously aware of what is the dynamics of ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing is something that should never be said. A cleansing of something is the removal of dirt. I don't believe that just because someone could look at an ethnic group of people as dirt, that should give them the qualification or privilege to be able to make such a claim as ethnic cleansing. It's oxymoronic. The ethnicity of a person on this earth that was created by our universe can never be looked at something that is filthy. So killing it is not cleansing it. Murder is murder. The cleansing should be done to the mind of the person who think they're privileged enough, or their ego is so high that they have the nerves to look at someone else just because they're in a position of power corruption, and that's only because someone has made a weapon that can make them have power of someone else, and they utilize that weapon to oppress people, steal from people, rape people. All this stuff we know has been synonymous with activities of these Europeans on the earth. And then this stuff make you have an ego where you can start looking at people and making statements that they went through ethnic cleansing, meaning that it was an ethnical thing to do to cleanse the earth of them. You should cleanse the earth of yourself. Anyone who would think such a action can exist and actually be categorized like that. This is so ridiculous, so stupid, so European. I don't even believe that a black person would ever think of such a concept. I mean, not in that sense, because the melanated people is confused as hell because of our exposure to Europeans. But what I mean is in the original state of untarnished, the whole ideal of you believing that you can cleanse the planet by murdering another human being without understanding the fact that you should cleanse the planet of yourself if that's the only thing you're going to contribute. It's murdering other people. Think about that.
Charles Darwin and Francis Galton were there to tell the world that people of African descent were just one small step above the ape. And white elitists embraced that philosophy, not because they had studied it and found it to be true, but because it gave them the permission they needed to wipe us out. And that launched a chain of events that quickly took on a life of its own. Every time one eugenic strategy failed, another was invented to take its place. It was a pattern that would be continued from one generation to the next until they finally discovered the strategy that worked.
You know, when you study the Nazi Holocaust, you can see these films of Jews running into ditches to be shot in the head. You can see films of them actually walking into the gas chambers. And it's tempting to ask yourself why they didn't fight back. I mean, if you're going to be killed anyway, what do you have to lose? Perhaps the answer is that they simply could not believe it was really happening. Maybe the normal human mind is just not wired to accept that your fellow man is capable of such senseless brutality on such a scale, even when you see it happening with your own eyes. As African Americans, we need to recognize that we are doing the same thing.
I agree.
We need to understand that terms like pro-choice and reproductive rights and family planning are nothing more than marketing slogans. They're just code words that organizations like Planned Parenthood use to hide the fact that we're voluntarily submitting to the will of those who have been trying to exterminate us since the day slavery ended.
At the beginning of this program, we told you that the Ma'afa didn't end with the freeing of the slaves, and that in fact, it hasn't ended yet. Now you've seen the rest of the story. Now you know that legalized abortion is more than just a crime against humanity. It is also the continuation of a 150-year-old racial agenda that was founded in Black genocide. And I hope that you have also come to see that as long as abortion remains legal, the Ma'afa cannot end. Thanks for watching.
Brothers and sisters, it is time. Brothers and sisters, it's time for us to go to the streets on this issue. We need to be in the streets on this issue. If we look the other way, while our smallest brothers and sisters are being lynched in their rooms, we lose the right to be outraged that we were once lynched by the country. When white supremacist Tom Messer tells his followers to invest their money in ghetto abortion clinics, he's not talking about reproductive rights. He's talking about reproductive racism. When two guys write a book talking about Steve Levette, John Donahue. When two guys, Steve Levette and John Donahue, write a book in which they claim that the high rate of abortion keeps the rate of crime down. Be assured, they know that a vast majority of American abortion clinics are in black neighborhoods. They know they're in the minority. What we need to understand is when we let Planned Parenthood into our schools, when Planned Parenthood put their death camps, when we let them put their death camps in black communities, in our communities, and when we sit back and let an elected government official take money out of our paycheck to pay Planned Parenthood, we have been played like fools. The fact is, if we tolerate something as evil as abortion, we cannot be surprised if it turns around and is used against us. We can't be surprised if it's turned around and used against us. We can't be angry if it's turned around and used against us. Notice for sure, as long as abortion is legal, in America will never be stopped if it's been used to commit black genocide. We'll never be able to use it as a weapon for what I call it law. The fact is, if we tolerate something as evil as abortion, we cannot be surprised and angry when it's turned against us. Say it that one, didn't it? You know it's easy, you know it was easy to spot the enemy when he was a redneck, toothless redneck. Probably spent about 3 years trying to get past 4th grade. But today, our enemy don't wear white boots. Today, our enemies wear a white lab coat with a stethoscope around his neck. And what gets really aggravating sometimes, like a pimp, sometimes he's black. And this is not about political parties either, because there's a reason I'm an independent. Both the Republican Party and Democrat Party have been in bed with Jezebel and the eugenics business for more years than you and I have been alive. I will also tell you this, every time we vote for politicians who tell us they are pro-choice, it's like we're spitting on the graves of our ancestors. Our ancestors did not break the chains of slavery. They didn't escape the plantations and the cotton field just so we could actually then take power and give it to political people who were there to wipe us out. We need to remember why there were civil rights groups that fought against abortion in the 60s. We need to understand what it was that Harold Crawford and Irma Carver Craven was talking about long before abortion became legal in this nation, when they stood up and they noted there's a real connection between poverty, abortion, and genocide. They understood. Folks, you know, it's time we look at what's been done to our children. I had the privilege of meeting Manny T. in Chicago years ago. He complimented us on what we were doing. And my heart was really moved sitting next to her and having this lady look me in the eye and tell me that. Because you remember Emmett Till. And we have to remember what happened. When he was beaten and bludgeoned so bad that most of the time people say, well, there's got to be a closed casket. His mother decided, no, no, no. She demanded an open casket because she wanted the world to see what they had done to her baby. And it's time we now look and not look away and look what has been done to our children in the womb. It's womb lynching. Now the point is not that killing a black child is worse than killing a white child. It's not. Regardless of the victim's skin color, eye color, or hair color, legalized abortion is a crime against all humanity. Everyone. But it's also, it's like a loaded gun aimed right between our eyes. And every time we walk into a voting booth and we have elected politicians who says he pro-choice, by pulling that lever, every time we pull that lever for a pro-choice, we pull the trigger on that loaded gun. And a child dies. That's true regardless of what party you're in. True regardless of what office they're running. You and I know there's a lot of pro-choice politicians. They will concede. They'll say, oh, well, yes, we know that abortion is the taking of a human life. They'll admit that. Then they turn around right around and say, but it should be legal. And I have to wonder, why? No, that don't have to really why. I just wonder how many of these politicians who know that abortion is mass murder tolerate it because they think the right people are being murdered. Now I don't know the answer to that question. But I do know this. I know that if the Klan, with or without their hoods, were to open up a whole chain of abortion clinics, and they were to concentrate them in the black communities, we will be smart enough to know what's going down. But I'm telling y'all something, brothers and sisters. We shouldn't be smart enough to know what's going down now when Planned Parenthood and these other abortion businesses do the same thing. The time has come for us to wake up. The time has come for us to realize that we, our people, are no longer being illegally lynched one or two at a time at the end of a dirt road. It's time for us to realize that our people are being womb lynched. It is time to realize they are being legally ripped to shreds by millions in air-conditioned rooms with sweet, soft elevator music playing in the background. It is time for us to realize that we are in a war. We're in a war, and if we don't become involved and we try to look the other way, it's going to wipe us out. It's called black genocide. It's time that we realize we have found the weapon of mass destruction, and the weapon of mass destruction is the deception machine in Planned Parenthood. Knowing what we know now, we can no longer look the other way. To end this mouth in the 21st century, we as a people will have to do something. To do nothing is not an option. The only question left to answer is, what are we going to do about it?
alone that tries to get rid of the blood on their hands will be. I have come today to pay the respects of my nation to all who suffered and all who perished in the Rwanda genocide. It may seem strange to you here, especially the many of you who lost members of your family. But all over the world, there were people like me sitting in offices day after day after day who did not fully appreciate the depth and the speed with which you were being engulfed by this unimaginable terror.
I think Clinton knew exactly what was going on in Rwanda. As in so many other things, his mind was off somewhere else at the time, and he just didn't take it seriously enough.
No, he orchestrated and planned it. The United States is always behind all this type of bullshit. The United States and Israel. All the time. They knew exactly what was going on because they're the ones orchestrate this type of shit. This is the reason why I'm so angry. Because these one people on this planet is just doing everything they can to murder us all over the damn earth.
All of these people know they were wrong. They know that their behavior
all over Mother Earth. I take that back. Not the damn Earth. It's the damn people on it that messes it up.
And they still to this day cannot acknowledge it and cannot atone for it. And cannot have the decency and the courage to present themselves to Rwanda and say, we were wrong, we're here.
No, we're doing what we do best.
Know that their behavior, other things, his mind was off somewhere else at the time, and he just didn't take it seriously enough. And all this caterwauling about if only I had known, spare me. He knew. Allowed the worst genocide at the end of the 20th century that is imaginable. And they still to this day cannot acknowledge it and cannot atone for it and cannot have the decency and the courage to present themselves to Rwanda and say, we were wrong, we're here to commemorate the horror with you. We will stand shoulder by shoulder by you as you attempt to overcome the inheritance. But the world just conked out again. And I guess is what makes one feel maybe it could happen again. If you're so irresolute 10 years after the event, then maybe it could happen again. Maybe that's just a commentary on how delinquent we are.
You can see the division right there. They looking at them white people like, I ought to come on there and fuck y'all asses up. Because you know who did it. We know who caused this.
Being with all those victims.
And I know it's horrible. It's real horrible. But I just got to give it to you like it is. No one else is being honest as I am.
Because touching them as we were doing would freeze your hand. Because the cold of death has no temperature. It just stings.
I'm gonna tell you guys, Bill Clinton was a real devil. He was just really smooth and sneaky, and everybody loved him because he played the saxophone and all the little side effect Hollywood theatrical bullshit he threw at everybody. But he did a lot of damage with his policies to us blacks, to melanated people. That was him and his wife, both of them. God is going to tear their asses up. All these people on this earth, look at them. He was measuring this guy's nose. The nerve of them to come into someone else's land and take data to prove that they are inferior to white people. That's what that's all about. He's getting evidence to prove to the world that these people are inferior to white people. That's what that's all about. That's why they're doing that. And so by proving the inferiority of a race, that justifies the mistreatment of them. That's what that's all about. And as you can see, it's supplied with European reckoning, European garments. See, this is why there's so much war all over the planet, because these European males are making profit.